Hey everyone, I'm Patrick O'Brien, and today we will be discussing the first movement of Beethoven's Piano Sonata Number 12. We will first discuss an overview of Beethoven's piano sonatas, then go into an overview of the large-scale form of the piece, and afterwards we will discuss specific distinct sections of the piece in more detail, listening to them before going into further detail about these sections. Beethoven wrote a series of 32 piano sonatas over the course of his musical career. These sonatas can be divided into three distinct periods: his early period, which was marked by a heavy influence of Haydn and Mozart; his middle period, which was characterized by a departure from conventional sonata form; and his late period, which is marked by incredible amounts of virtuosity from the performer and a full transition into the realm of romantic music. The large-scale form of this work is a theme and variations. More specifically, a sectional theme and variations, as the variants don't all segue into each other, but instead almost act as standalone movements. As we discussed earlier, this is one of Beethoven's first sonatas in his middle period, and as such, departs from the traditional structure of the first movement being in sonata form. The theme Beethoven introduces is a fairly simple one, only lasting 34 measures, with fairly standard harmonic structure and formal structure, which will be discussed later. However, the later variants evolve this theme into 5 other distinct styles. We will now listen to the theme and go into greater detail about its structure. The formal structure of the theme is in rounded binary form. As you can see, the A section comprises of the first 16 measures, with the digression beginning in measure 17 and the return of the A section occurring in measure 27. Looking more in depth at the phrase structure of the theme, it can be seen the A section is a period, with the antecedent and consequent each making up 8 bars, and each respective basic idea and contrasting idea of the antecedent and consequent comprising of 4 bars. This is unconventional of a standard period, as generally each unit is half the length of what is found in this beginning theme. Harmonically, the period follows a standard trajectory, with the basic idea alternating between tonic and dominant chords in the first 4 bars, and then going through a set of predominant function chords in the next 4, ending with a half cadence in the key of A flat. Then, in the consequent, we have identical harmonic movement until the end, which is a PAC instead of a half cadence in the key of A flat. Moving along, we can see some fragmentation occurring in the unit sizes, which implies that the digression is formally a continuation. This occurs from measure 17 to 26. As far as harmonic structure goes, the digression is what you'd expect, with a fairly unstable harmonic palette going on with some sequencing occurring. For example, in the first 2 bars we see the motive primarily centered around the 2-chord B flat minor before sequencing down to A flat once more. On measure 27, we then see the return of the consequent phrase from the earlier period we identified. The formal and harmonic structure are the exact same from the consequent we saw earlier. Now that we've covered the theme, we'll now listen to the first variation and go into more detail about that. The first variation features the same formal structure as the theme and is rounded binary, featuring the same breakdown as the theme, with a 16 measure period, 10 measure digression, and then 8-bar return. As we see here, the A section looks almost identical, as well as the digression and the return to the A section. The main feature of this variation is to simply add embellishment through the 32nd note arpeggios. These arpeggios bring out the harmonic structure of the work even more by outlining in more detail the chordal function of each area of the melody. However, harmonically, this variation is the exact same as the theme. Now that we have discussed the first variation, we will listen to the second variation and go into more detail about that. The second variation features the same formal structure as the theme as well, and is rounded binary, with the same breakdown of the 16 measure period, 10 measure digression, and then 8-bar return. Once again, the A section looks almost identical. The digression, however, offers our first glimpse at a slightly different material, with the first two fragments featuring notable chromatic passing turns that were not in the previous variation or in the theme. The return, once again, is almost identical. The main feature of this variation is the division of the melody into the right and left hands, which creates energy and rhythmic excitement for the listener. As far as harmonic structure goes, this, for the most part, is the same as the theme. Now that we have discussed the second variation, we'll listen to the third variation and go into greater detail about that. The third variation is also in rounded binary form, but is the most notably different from the other variations due to it being in the key of A flat minor, the parallel minor of the previous variations. In addition, something interesting occurs in the A section of the variation. The basic idea is drastically altered from before, starting to sequence upward after the first 3 bars, starting on a Neapolitan chord, and then continuing with secondary dominance. The digression, however, features the same kind of instability that was seen in the digressions of earlier variations. The consequent and the return of the A section features the same unusual sequence that was seen in the earlier period. Now that we've listened to the third variation, we will move on to the fourth variation and go into more detail about that. The fourth variation is once again in rounded binary form and follows the same formal divisions of the earlier theme and earlier variations. As you can see from the A section, digression, and then the return of the A section. The unique aspect of this variation is its meter, that being 3/8. This variation takes the theme and adapts it, turning it into a cheerful waltz. Harmonically, we return to the key of A flat major, and the harmonic trajectory is the same as that of the theme. Now that we've discussed the fourth variation, we will move on to the fifth and final variation and go into detail about that. The fifth variation is in rounded binary form and features the same formal breakdown as the theme, however also includes a 16-measure coda tacked on to the end. As you can see from the A section, we see the familiar theme of earlier variations, the same, albeit modified motives from the digression, including the chromatic passing tones that we identified in the earlier second variation. In the return to the A section, once again, we see the same, albeit shortened consequent that we've seen before. The shortened consequent is a result of the coda tacked on at the end. The main purpose of this variation is to show off the virtuosity of the performer, and is in what is called brilliant style, which is characterized by challenging virtuosic elements. The coda is also a unique feature, combining the basic idea seen in earlier periods with a striking cadential figure at the end. I hope you're able to gather some information on this wonderful piece of music. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me at obrie2pj@dukes.jmu.edu. Thank you very much for listening.